everyone, it's Sophie. I'm here in Washington Square Park with the one and only Joe Vogel, who is a state legislator in Maryland running for Congress to represent Maryland's 6th Congressional District.
Well, it's great to be here with you. This is so exciting.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. How's your New York trip been so far?
It's been short, but it's been good.
Okay.
I get to hang out with you, so couldn't be better.
I'm so happy we met. We clearly have so much in common, which is what we're here to do today. Our platform is all about bringing people together to have conversations that bring us back to the same table. And I'm sure running for Congress, so much of your platform addresses not just one side of the aisle, but the other side as well, and all of the gray in between. So I'd love to ask you, to what extent do you feel these conversations are already happening in the work that you're doing? And how do you hope to have more of them as you run for office?
Well, look, the work that I've been able to get done in the legislature has been bipartisan. Of the legislation that I passed, the bills that we were able to get across the finish line, I think all of them passed with unanimous support, many with bipartisan co-sponsors, Republicans and Democrats coming together to take on some of the biggest issues that we're facing, from the mental health crisis to the opioid overdose epidemic. And we're going to continue working together across the aisle with people. We might not agree on everything, but if we can find that common ground and work together, I'm going to do that.
And do you feel like that value of bringing people together is something that Gen Z really bolsters, or do you feel like our generation is becoming less and less open to dialogue?
I think we need to be more open to dialogue. When we want to make progress on these issues, look, I have very progressive values, but I also believe that we need to be able to get things done. We have to deliver, because if we don't deliver on our progressive agenda, it doesn't matter, right? So sometimes that requires working together with people who we might disagree with on most things. But if we can find that one issue, like mental health, for example, sit down, have the conversation, and work together on legislation, that's what I do.
We do a segment here on POVz called our Common Ground series, where we'll identify something that you feel so passionately about, and then we'll find someone who holds maybe an opposite view and see if we can find that commonality. Let me ask you this, Joe. What is wrong with the world today?
Well, I think you look at democracy, right? And it's on decline across the world. But here in our country, our democracy is in trouble. Part of it has to do with the far-right attacks on our democratic institutions, on our fundamental rights. But what also concerns me is that we have a growing number of people that have lost faith in democracy. You look at young people in particular, so many people are losing faith in government's ability to deliver and democracy's ability to make life better for them. So we have to restore people's faith in democratic governance.
And is that part of the reason why you wanted to run for Congress?
Yeah, there are so many people that look at politics, look at Congress, and say, that's broken. Why should I get involved? Why should I vote?
Does my voice even matter?
Exactly, if nothing's getting done. We're on the campaign making sure that we're talking about the issues that matter to people, listening to people, and that's the kind of congressman that I'll be. Someone that, has these progressive values, but is also deeply committed to getting something done and showing people that democracy, that government really does deliver for them.
Well, let's find someone maybe with a different point of view and see if we can establish that common ground. Okay. I think that would be like a fun reveal.
My focus on getting things done, my focus on delivering.
You want to be on our talk show? Amazing! I'm Sophie. This is Joe. Welcome to the show. What's your name and where are you from?
I'm Kevi and I'm from California.
I'm Alana and I'm from California.
Awesome. Well, Alana, Kevi, welcome to POVz. I know we're sitting here with Joe. So I want to start off with just a basic question. What is your POV on our democratic system and politics nowadays?
I think politics nowadays is really intense, and I feel like if you're not really political in this age or day, it says a lot. And as for democracy, I feel like it's all really like what party's in power, and I feel like sometimes it doesn't really stand for the majority of what people in this country want, and I think that's really evident by the Supreme Court rulings nowadays.
Alana, what about you? What's your POV on our political system?
From my perspective, I think we're just so focused on like the bipartisan and which side that you're going to be on, and I feel like there's one that's really heavy leaning towards the other, and it's really hard to kind of come to a compromise or consensus, especially when it comes to social media and the way that people express their opinions. It can become really convoluted to understand and just kind of find a middle ground.
I hear you. And Joe, before I come to you, I have one more question for you guys. Do you feel like you've lost faith in our political system?
Absolutely.
Yeah, like I said, really bipartisan. I feel like you have to be on one side. It's just really hard for us to find some kind of middle ground, but it's really hard to just come to that nowadays.
There's no compromise, and I feel like every single issue is really either or. Some people can see a middle ground, but they refuse to accept it because it's not within their party's guidelines or what their party advocates for.
I hear you. We've got a lot to unpack. I want to come to Joe too, and this is why I think this is going to be a great conversation, because while maybe the two of you feel like you've lost faith in our system, system. I think Joe might have a different point of view. So Joe, what's your take on that?
I hear a lot of what you're saying, and it's not just you all. I think a lot of folks in our generation look at our politics and look at our democracy and feel like it's so broken, right? So toxic, so partisan. Nothing's really getting done, and people are losing faith in our democratic system. So, I think one of the greatest challenges that we have right now is people losing faith, because we see those attacks. You were talking about the Supreme Court, right? We see those attacks on our rights and we see those attacks on our democracy, but we need people willing and ready to stand up and push back and protect our democracy. But people aren't going to be willing to protect our democracy if they don't believe in our democracy.
Let me ask that question. Do you believe in our democracy?
There's some stuff said in the Constitution that is not applicable at all today. So I feel like our democracy is definitely in need of like some revamping.
Ultimately, yes or no, do you believe in our democracy?
No, but it has potential.
Love the optimism there. Okay, Alana, what about you?
I actually would say yes. I think right now, especially, it's just really hard. But I think like, in terms of like in history and like how much we've progressed since then, and like the revolutions that we've had and the progress that we've had in history, I think we have, like Kevin said, the potential to get there. It's just hard to, be like completely optimistic about it, but I think it's a possibility for sure.
And Joe, what gives you hope about our democracy? Like, I'd love for Kevy to hear your point of view.
Well, look, I think we're starting to see a new generation of leaders who, we have the progressive values, but we also want to deliver, because I think we've seen for so long on so many of these issues inaction and a lack of progress. So I think we're seeing this new generation that says, hey, we're going to get things done, and we're going to make people believe again in government's ability to deliver and in democracy's ability to deliver for people.
What's your POV on politicians?
I think a lot of politicians are I'm losing my words, but I think that there's definitely a power dynamic to it. I think some of them do go into it believing that they're definitely going to help. I think it's not really appropriate to always look to a politician to solve every single problem, because democracy is way more than one person. For politicians, I think that there's some faith in them and some are just not good.
Alana, what's your POV on politicians?
I think that just obviously there's no picture perfect politician that I can name, or anyone can really name. It's you have to come to a compromise and who aligns with your value the most.
Do you trust politicians?
Not really. I feel like it's always again that power dynamic. I feel like a lot of people are greedy for power and they just do what they want. But there's also some really good politicians. Nothing is absolute. There's people who are probably genuine and go into the field thinking yeah, I really want to help people. But there's obviously people who probably just do it just because they want that power and that ability to make decisions for others.
In a grand scheme of things, I think trust is a really interesting word. But in terms of what they go into office and what they promise and how to the extent of what they can do, it was obviously not a very easy job. It's easier said than done from our perspective. And there's a lot of other factors that go into, policy making and decision making that we don't get to see as well. You also have to give grace with that too. It's not a very easy job. I would say yes. A slight yes, I would. The ones that I have a lot of faith in, I would say yes. On the grand scheme of things, I wouldn't say all politicians.
Do you feel like there's anyone currently in office or running for office that represents you or our generation?
I like AOC.
We were talking about her what if we run into her?
And Ilhan Omar. I really like her.
Joe, what's your take on whether we should place more trust in politicians?
Well, I think we need more politicians that we can trust. I'm a state legislator in Maryland. I represent Gaithersburg and Rockville in our state house there, and I'm running for Congress in the central and western part of the state. Surprise! You were talking about the lack of willingness to find common ground on these issues, find consensus, and get things done. And in the legislature, that's really what I focused on, right? It's working together with Republicans who I might disagree with on a lot of issues, but we can find those 1, 2, 3 issues where we work together and we're able to deliver. We're able to find that compromise, find that consensus, and get things done. And I think that is part of what we need right now, right? But also politicians who are trustworthy, who aren't there just for the sake of power or for profit, but really to get something done on these issues that, we've been waiting for so long for change.
Were you expecting to hear that Joe's a politician?
I feel like he was something important.
I mean, he's got the suit in 90-degree weather.
Maybe a law school student.
What was your reaction to hearing that, Joe's running for Congress and is a politician?
That's crazy.
I know, I think it's crazy. You just look away, just look so chill.
And do you feel like that kind of opened your mind to maybe who could represent us and our generation or how we perceive politicians?
Yeah, of course. Like, I feel like with our generation, we're really working towards something better, but it's just like older generations that are just kind of hindering it. Yeah, I definitely have faith.
Do you feel like hearing Joe's perspective and vice versa, Joe hearing Kevin and Alana's perspective, do you feel like we see eye to eye on certain aspects of democracy?
I think that there's definitely better things to come, especially with people like Joe running for office, because I think it's important to accept that our democratic system has faults, and it's important to just keep trying to work towards something better and not give up, basically.
I love that. Alana, what about you?
I think or to what Joe said, just having a good, very action-based approach, and obviously recognizing the faults that we have and taking more action towards that and just building the trust, just like things like this. I think that's something that I really appreciate, where we're able to have like one-on-one interactions with the politicians. It makes it feel more humane, personable as well.
Joe, I mean, after hearing Kevin and Alana's points of view, is there anything that you're taking away or maybe that you understand about their side?
Yeah, look, I think it's, again, the urgency of the moment that we're in. And I agree with you on a lot of these issues that you're talking about. And look, I think ultimately, I feel more hopeful, right? Hearing that you all still have hope and the potential for our democracy, right? I think the task of our generation is to protect that democracy against the attacks that we're seeing on it, and also to make other people believe again that democracy can still deliver. We got a lot of work to do for that to happen.
It's okay if your answer has not changed, but I like to circle back to the question, do you believe in our democratic system?
I still think it has potential, but yeah, I guess my answer would still be like, not right now.
I'm a little bit more optimistic, so I would say yes.
And Joe, what about you?
I still do.
And I think that's what our entire mission is about here and why we host this show, because at the end of the day, we don't have to change our views or try to bring someone over to your side, but ultimately in talking about what we believe and why we believe it, we can identify some overlap. We all believe that there is still that optimism, but we need to meet that with action. And I think it was so cool hearing your perspective, Joe, as someone running for Congress, and also from the two of you who just graduated college and, really feel that there's much more to be done. But we came out of this realizing that there is still hope. And even though that may seem very lofty, it's something we can hold on to. So thank you all so much for having this conversation.
I'm so grateful that you guys took the time to chat with us.
Joe, how did that feel? Were you expecting to kind of come out of that conversation feeling hopeful? What's your takeaway?
My favorite part of all this is just listening to people. And that was a great opportunity to listen to people talk about an issue that I care really deeply, which is the state of our democracy and the future of our democracy.
I'm leaving today feeling a renewed sense of hope in at least your ability to want to go out and find that common ground with other politicians. And it seems like you do that a lot, and I admire that that's in the work that you do. What's your secret? How can we all go out and try to establish that common ground more often, even with the people around us?
Well, look, I think first it's the secret's listening, because you don't know if you can find common ground with someone or what you can work together with someone if you're not willing to first listen. And I think so much of our politics today is talk. And if we were to stop and listen, try to find that common ground and try to find those issues. So much of the focus of our politics right now is on everything we disagree on. But if we start to change that and say, hey, we might disagree on 99% of issues, but what's that 1% that we can find common ground on? Because those are issues where we'll really be able to start to make progress and deliver.
100%. I feel like a lot of those common threads between us are what allow us to continue these conversations over time, right? It gives us some vestige of hope that there's one thing that I can share with someone else.
Right.
And I'm so glad you brought up listening, because we can't even understand what someone else believes unless we sit down and really listen.
Yes.
So I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yes.
And to what extent did today's conversation open your echo chamber or your worldview?
Well, look, I think it's a reminder of the different perspectives that we have in our generation. I read a lot of the polling of young people who really feel hopeless when it comes to the state of the country right now and the state of the world, and people that really have lost faith. And that really worries me when I look at the numbers and when I have conversations with people, anecdotally, that back those numbers up. Right? It's a reminder that we have a lot of work to do, because we can't have these conversations with everyone, right? So what we need are politicians who are out there talking about their willingness to get things done and making clear to young people that they're being heard, that they have a voice in government, and that there's someone that's trying to deliver to secure a better future for all of us.
1000%. And every person we have on the show, we always ask this question. So I can't let you leave without saying, Joe, drop a hot take.
High School Musical, best movie of all time.
I fully agree. But the question is, which one? 1, 2, or 3?
So-
or High School Musical, the series on Disney Plus.
Not the series, but huge Josh Bassett fan.
Olivia Rodrigo or Joshua Bassett?
Josh Bassett. That's also a hot take. I went to a Josh Bassett concert, and I love Olivia
Same.
Rodrigo. But the Josh Bassett concert was another hot take. One of the best concerts I've been to in my entire life, and I go to a lot of concerts. Unbelievable. Like, I think I was probably the oldest person there, and I was like, set me free.
That song hits every time.
It's every time.
Which High School Musical is the best of all time?
That's a hard question. I think the first is like the OG, you know, so like we like the first. I would have to say the second is the best.
Okay,
The ending scene where like, what, it was that like Miley Cyrus that makes
the
like
pool.
a-
I rarely share my personal opinion here, and I think it's really important for me to say that I fully disagree.
Right,
High School
really?
Musical 2 is the best one. I think High School Musical 3 is the best
High
one.
School Musical. Who says we can't let it go? It's the best time you ever know.
Step into the future. The soundtrack is great. I saw it twice in theaters when it came out. I think the music is so good. Like, what's your favorite High School Musical song?
It's time to move on and
Be who I am.
I just don't belong here. You know, I mean, look, there was an era, there was a phase in my life when I was like a third grader and my locker was covered in High School Musical posters.
Wow.
Yeah, and now I'm like I'm running to be the first openly gay member of Congress from Maryland, and who would have known, you know?
I love it. I love it. If you could be any character in High School Musical, if like maybe your school was doing a
God.
version of the show, or if they were doing a sequel, who would you want to play?
I mean, probably Troy. You get the basketball, you get the singing. He's like, yes.
Okay, I love it. So you heard it here.
Living in my own world, didn't understand that anything can happen if you take the chance. If you take a chance, yeah.
And Joe, even though we don't agree on which High School Musical is the best, I don't think we have to go our own way after this one. I think we can we can learn how to coexist.
We're all in this together, as they say.
Thank you so much for being on the show.